mean, that's all it is, you know. I mean, I'm very, very fortunate in that, you know, knock wood as I say this. For me, writing is therapy as well as, you know, if I didn't write, I'd be a banana. Suicide, you know. I mean, it's and I learned kind of early on that if I'm not multitasking, I usually have more than one thing I'm working on.
Right.
And that really helps me. Some people can't work that way, but for me, if I have one script and I can put it aside and go to the other thing, generally then I can get re-energized on that, you know. So if I'm toggling between two things, I usually find that makes both of the experience, you know, both experiences better for me. And you know, there are times when I'm just stuck, but I think my TV experience taught me, like, just write bad, write bad until you can write better. Like, you just write, you know, and then you go back and you'll be like, oh, well, that day's work is shot, but you keep that momentum.
But that's a great point, though, and I think that's something that's good for everybody to know, and that is that just get it on the page.
Yeah.
Then you can work backwards,
Yeah.
but just get it on the page, put it out there. Sitting frozen, disaster.
Yeah.
You know, although it does happen,
Yeah.
but the idea of like getting it on the page, and you know what you have, you can go back and look at it, you can rip it up, but at least it's a stream of conscience.
I mean, I've given myself total permission to suck, and I do a lot, and then I go back and I revise. But my first drafts, I try not to think too much. I try to let that instinct kick in, and the best thing that can happen is, you know, it took me a long time actually. When I first started writing, I was writing because other people told me they thought that's what I was good at. I was fortunate in that I wrote my first script without any expectation of it selling, so it was very personal, and people responded to it. And then I was like, oh man, I'm a writer, you know. And so for 5 or 6 years I wrote, and it was really like a grind. And then something happened. I think it's probably when I got the craft under my skin a little bit. I'd done enough of those hours that finally, so like structure and those things kind of fell in a little more naturally. Then suddenly something happened where I'd kind of lose time. And I would feel, and still to this day feel, like characters speak to me, and things happen that I didn't know were going to happen. So I almost feel like I'm getting to watch TV, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Are you your best editor, or
No.
is there somebody who you love to give to read things that are a first draft?
I wish I had, you know, like my best friend in the world is an incredible screenwriter who's worked on major movies, and she read the outline for Fright Night, which was much like the movie ended up being, and she came back to me and she said, they're just not going to let this be good, are they?
It's such a good movie.
Thank you. And I had to be like, okay, I think she's wrong, you know. I don't know that anybody, the thing I rely on is opinions that are consistent. I have to give it to a little group of people, and if 3 out of 5 say this isn't working, then that's not working. I can't really rely on 1 or 2 people. You know, I find some people just sort of love everything, and some people are hard on everything. And so I haven't found that one person who really knows me best. My agent actually is a really good reader. I find her to be, you know, maybe because she has such a long view, you know, she tends to be able to anticipate what producers are going to say.
Yeah, that's a good thing, because sometimes that feedback can be true for the person, and then also it can be, is it Adriana?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's terrific, because I think she's really, really good at it, and also, she also can inform you about what else is out there, or studio history and so on, so that's a great benefit, I'm sure. Let's open it up to some questions. Anybody first? Yes, ma'am?
I'm curious about Lee and your work on that show, because I love that show, which I didn't expect. But if you're asked to come in and work on that, because it's so different, because it's got all this music, do you get to be involved in that process, or is there a whole separate team of people that just does that?
I never even met, I mean, I met folks on set a few times. I never met the people who do the music. It's just this weird little bubble that you're in. And I would like show Ryan videos and be like, let's use this song, and occasionally they'd go on the show. The weird thing about working on that show is like music clearance is not an issue. Like you just go to the internet and be like, how about this? And then someone magic, you know, because the only people who won't, I feel like Prince won't give them anything, and like a couple other people like that. But for all intents and purposes, if you can find it, they can have it. So, so you pitch music all the time, but I had nothing to do with the musical stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting show because on most shows, you know, the music budget's very small, and you don't get the, you know, you get maybe one great song every couple of episodes. And in Glee, it's such great commerce for artists. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Working with Rick Rosenthal, since he all the way through and whatnot.
Yeah.
How you started getting before, or you always into the work?
Everybody hear that question?
The
question
fellow,
was,
yeah.
You know, working with Rick Rosenthal, did you always like working with the horror genre, or did that come to you, or you came to it?
I think it was sort of a slow boil. Like the more I'm terrified of horror movies. Like I'm the girl watching like this, you know. But a good one, you know, a really good one has always been. Those have been among my favorite movies, and I have to say, like, the influence of Spielberg. You know, if J.J. Abrams didn't already exist, I'd want to, you know, wear Spielberg's skin. But I think J.J.'s already got first dibs.
He's wearing
you know, I mean, we're acolytes of a certain kind of fantasy filmmaking, and even though those weren't horror, they had that. You know, again, awe, you know, and I feel like the best horror movies take us to another place, just the dark side of that place, you know. I mean, The Exorcist is still one of the best movies I've ever seen, you know, it's so effective. So I love those movies, but then you know, when I found like Sam Raimi and, you know, when I found the sort of comedy horror genre, then I was in, because it's very hard for me to get into the situations and not crack a joke, you know? It's just like, real people would not believe this was happening, you know?
Right.
They would find it absurd, and so that it was sort of slow. The more exposed I got to the variety of stuff that was out there, the more I started having a hard time writing something straight. Like I consider writing just drama, just like it's like vanilla sex, you know?
It's also, you know, that genre, like fantasy or sci-fi, it's just a genre where the execution of director is so meaningful.
Oh yeah.
So you get to watch, you know, sometimes incredible things happen from a screenplay that you've written. So there's a lot of imagination and imagineering that goes into writing for that. Questions? No. Speak loud so I don't have to repeat it badly.
You don't have to worry about loud.
Okay.
I just want to say I really appreciate you talking about kind of the sexism in the industry, and I really appreciate hearing your story about Tink. And I write really unconventional female characters that are strong, and I'm really worried about them getting changed by the studio. So I'm wondering how you're feeling. Do you feel like the Bridesmaids effect that is changing, or it's slow and hard?
I mean, a friend of mine, I also produce sometimes, we have a comedy out there that's sort of in the bridesmaid space, and somebody said to us, well, we already have a female ensemble comedy, you know, in development. And I was like, how many male comedies do you have going right now? You know, so it's just this weird, you know, I think that there's definitely more opportunity for that. I hope that, you know, there's some follow-up in terms of the success of those. You know, it's all, you know, sort of such a reaction to what happens in the marketplace. But I will say, I think the last year or two have been very encouraging in terms of women going to the movies and women driving box office in a way that I think before they weren't actually, you know, people didn't actually think they do. But, you know, the movie business is changing so much that, I mean, the one thing I will say is, as a new writer, you have to be prepared to be collaborative and, you know, lower your standards. You know, like if you know, and you can do some defensive writing, which is give your character some quirks that you know won't make it. And then you can concede those and you can keep some of the ones you really love. But it's, you know, I mean, I love like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I love that movie. In part just because I was like, when she's in the room, I feel better for Daniel Craig. How often do I get to have that feeling when a little slip of a thing is the badass? That was so refreshing, but that movie didn't do very, you know, so it's this, or didn't do to expectations. So it's this, you know, thank God for Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And I do think it's changing. I think the other great thing is that there's this YA audience who's really, it's literate young women.
Yeah.
And half of the books I get right now are dystopian, female-driven action things. But most of them are really derivative, and I'm waiting for, a good one.
Right. Well, I think, also that business has changed a lot. There are more female executives. There are more female studio heads. There are, the split of, women driving, to the theater is like, 60-40. It's pretty much, I think, probably the best time that it's ever been. There are more gay and lesbian characters on TV than there have ever been. So I think it's actually really a good time. Things do get changed, I think, but I think for the most part the industry is a really good, liberal, open-minded place right now. They're all trying to find it, and you look at the Academy Awards, and it's so many independent movies, and it's so many movies like that winning, so it's about originality in a way, and I think it can be any genre, it can be any character. Questions? Yes, sir.